On Christmas Eve 1945, a devastating fire engulfed the home of George and Jenny Sodder in Fayetteville, West Virginia. The couple, along with 4 of their 9 children, managed to escape the inferno. But 5 of their children, Maurice, Martha, Louis, Jenny, and Betty, were tragically left behind, seemingly perishing in the blaze. This is the story officially told, the one reported in the papers. But for the Sodder family, this was not a tragic accident. It was the beginning of a lifelong, agonizing mystery that haunts us to this day. What really happened to the 5 missing Sodder children? Was it a fire, or something far more sinister? The night of the fire was a cascade of strange and unfortunate events. It all began with a late-night phone call. Around midnight, Jenny Sodder was woken by the ringing phone. A woman on the other end asked for a name she didn't recognize. Jenny told the caller she had the wrong number and hung up, noticing that all the lights were still on and the front door was unlocked, which was unusual. She assumed the older children had forgotten to lock up before heading to bed in the attic. After turning off the lights and locking the door, she went back to sleep. Just an hour later, at around 1 in the morning, Jenny was woken again, this time by a strange thud on the roof, followed by a rolling sound. She dismissed it and fell back asleep. But half an hour later, she woke for the 3rd time, smelling smoke. Her husband's office was on fire. George, Jenny, and 4 of their children, John, George Jr., Mary, and Sylvia, frantically escaped the house. But the 5 upstairs in the attic were trapped. Panic set in. George rushed to get his ladder to rescue the children from the attic window, but it was inexplicably missing. It was usually kept in its specific spot against the house, but now it was gone. He then tried to drive one of his work trucks to the side of the house to climb on top of it, but neither of his trucks would start, despite working perfectly just the day before. The phone line was dead, so they couldn't call for help. A neighbor saw the blaze and tried to call the fire department from a nearby tavern, but the operator didn't respond. Another neighbor had to drive into town to find the fire chief directly. By the time the fire department arrived, it was far too late. The Sodder home had been reduced to a pile of ash and rubble. The fire chief, F. J. Morris, told the grieving parents that the fire had been hot enough to completely cremate the children's bodies, leaving nothing behind. The official cause of death was listed as fire or suffocation, and death certificates were issued just 4 days later. The Sodders were told to accept the unimaginable and move on. But they couldn't. Too many things just didn't add up. For starters, Jenny Sodder, a homemaker, knew that household fires weren't typically hot enough to completely incinerate human bones. She began her own quiet investigation, conducting experiments by burning animal bones to see if they would turn to ash. They never did. This fueled her suspicion that her children had not died in the fire. Where were their remains? A professional crematorium, which operates at much higher temperatures than a house fire, still leaves behind bone fragments. A thorough search of the basement ash yielded nothing. No bones, no teeth, no sign of the 5 children. Then, there were the strange events leading up to the fire. A few months prior, a stranger had come to the Sodder home looking for work and pointed to the fuse boxes, warning George that they would cause a fire someday. Around the same time, another man tried to sell the family life insurance. When George refused, the man became enraged, warning him, "Your goddamn house is going up in smoke, and your children are going to be destroyed." He specifically mentioned George's open criticism of Mussolini, which was no secret in their Italian-American community. These weren't just idle threats, they were chilling premonitions. The Sodders also discovered that their ladder, missing on the night of the fire, had been found thrown in an embankment about 75 feet from the house. Why would someone move it? And what was the strange thud Jenny heard on the roof? Years later, their youngest daughter, Sylvia, who was just 2 at the time of the fire, remembered seeing a man watching them from the roadside as the house burned. As the years passed, the Sodders' belief that their children were alive grew stronger. They hired a private investigator named C.C. Tinsley, who uncovered some startling information. He learned that the fire chief, F. J. Morris, had supposedly found a human heart in the ashes. He claimed to have secretly buried it in a dynamite box. The Sodders had the box exhumed, and the heart was sent to a funeral director for examination. The verdict? It wasn't a human heart at all. It was beef liver, and it had never been exposed to fire. Why would the fire chief plant false evidence? Was he part of a cover-up? The Sodders' quest for answers turned into a public campaign. In 1952, they erected a large billboard along Route 16 with photos of their 5 missing children, offering a substantial reward for information leading to their recovery. The billboard became a local landmark, a heartbreaking monument to a family's undying hope and a community's dark secret. And then, potential sightings began to trickle in. A woman who ran a tourist stop claimed she had served breakfast to the children the morning after the fire. She said they were with 2 men and 2 women of Italian extraction in a car with Florida license plates. A hotel owner in Charleston, West Virginia, claimed to have seen the children about a week after the fire. She said, "The children were accompanied by 2 men and 2 women. I do not remember the exact date. The entire party registered at the hotel and stayed in a large room. They were all of Italian descent. I tried to talk to the children, but the men appeared hostile and refused to allow me to talk to them." Perhaps the most compelling and haunting piece of evidence arrived more than 20 years after the fire. In 1967, Jenny Sodder received an envelope in the mail, postmarked from Central City, Kentucky. Inside was a photograph of a young man in his mid to late 20s who bore a striking resemblance to her son Louis, who would have been in his 30s. On the back of the photo was a cryptic handwritten note: "Louis Sodder. I love brother Frankie. Illo boys. A 90132 or 35. The Sodders were convinced it was their long-lost son. They hired another private detective to investigate the new lead, sending him to Kentucky. But the detective took their money and was never heard from again. The family added the updated photo of Louis to their billboard, but the trail went cold. No one could decipher the meaning of the numbers and letters on the back. To this day, the identity of the man in the photograph and the person who sent it remains a complete mystery. George Sodder passed away in 1969, and Jenny followed in 1989. They went to their graves never knowing what happened to their children. The remaining Sodder children and their descendants have continued the search, but the case remains unsolved. The billboard, now weathered and worn, was finally taken down in the years after Jenny's death, but the story lives on. So what is the most likely theory? Many believe the children were kidnapped, possibly by the Sicilian mafia, as retaliation for George's outspoken anti-Mussolini views. The staged fire, the cut phone line, the disabled trucks, the missing ladder, it all points to a carefully planned abduction. Others speculate it was a local dispute that spiraled out of control. Could the fire chief and others have been involved in a cover-up to protect someone? The story of the Sodder children is a chilling reminder that sometimes the most terrifying monsters are not supernatural, but human. A family was torn apart, not just by flames, but by lies, secrets, and a search for truth that never ended. What do you think happened on that cold Christmas night? Was it a tragic accident, or was it a meticulously planned crime that has remained unsolved for over 75 years? The answer may be lost to time, buried under the ashes of a home and the weight of decades of silence. Thank you for watching, and if you found this story as compelling as I did, please consider subscribing for more deep dives into history's greatest unsolved mysteries.